Hi, 8th grade. So today we are going to continue to talk about the Civil War, and we're going to talk about the armies that fought on both sides. Um, if we remember from last time, one of the main causes of the Civil War was they were tensions or disagreements over slavery. The North decided slavery was no good, and the South was like, heck yeah, we want to keep the slaves. They work in our fields. They kind of saw them as dollar signs. Okay, so this is the think about it section. So first I want to tell you that the Union soldiers, when we're talking about Union soldiers, they are the soldiers who fought for the North. So they were against slavery. They had the better uniforms, they had the better weapons, and then there were the Confederate soldiers. They didn't have proper uniforms. They were from the 11 states that had decided to leave the United States of America and join the Confederate States of America. And they were mainly Southern farmers, laborers, and mechanics. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then you guys are going to do your discussion board. The Hornet's Nest. The Battle of Pittsburg Landing during the first day was one of the most terribly hard-fought battles of the war. The attack was the most fierce and the resistance the most stubborn. It was a complete illustration of Southern dash and Northern pluck and endurance. The Battle of Pittsburg Landing was an open field fight. Our army had not yet begun to see the shovel and pick, and the surface of the country was such that neither army could get much advantage over the other. The 31st was rather fortunate in getting a favorable position. It was halted in an old road, in which there had been beaten and washed a depression nearly a foot deep. In this depression the regiment lay down, and fired and loaded without getting up. The ground in front was literally covered with small undergrowth, a real thicket. This was, however, all cut off with bullets almost as clean as if a mowing machine had run it over. At no place on the whole line did Confederate dead lie thicker than here in our front. So numerous, in fact, were the rebel dead here that this place received the name and was known as the Hornet's Nest. Colonel John Thomas Smith. Okay, so what I want to tell you is that number one, this is a primary source because Colonel John Thomas Smith, he was there during the Civil War, and this is something that he wrote. Okay, so we want to talk about what does this quotation reveal about the battles that took place during the Civil War. So when we're talking about this reading and what he has to say, he says it was an open field fight, meaning it was just out there, right? And the North and the South were fighting, and no army had much of an advantage over the other at this point, right? It was halted in an old road, so it stopped in the middle of an old road. There was a beaten and washed depression nearly a foot deep. That means there was like almost like a hole, like a foot deep, and that's where the regiment or the army, they lay down and they fired and they loaded, and the ground in front of them, it was small undergrowth, a real thicket, which means it had a lot of wood and brush and kind of like outside debris. Um, but it was all gone. Bullets came out. They were just going everywhere, right? And at this point, that's where the Confederate dead lay, right there in front of them. Okay, so you tell me. So numerous, in fact, were the rebel dead here, and when he's talking about the rebel dead, he's talking about the Confederate Army because they're rebels because they left the United States of America and went and joined the Confederate Army because they were supporting slaves and they were supporting the South, okay, among other things. But so this war is between the North and the South. So I want you to think about what this quotation reveals about the battles that took place during the Civil War. And I want you to think about what differences does Colonel Smith observe between the Union and the Confederate soldiers. Based on these characteristics, who do you think had the advantage? Okay, so think about those things, write them in the discussion board, and I can't wait to see what you guys have to write.